Hello and welcome, friends of Dinokeng Game Reserve. This is Matt's Habitat, and I'm your host, Matt Templey. I'm a wildlife monitor for Dinokeng Game Reserve, and in this series, we uncover some of the remarkable stories on what it takes to make a place like Dinokeng Game Reserve work. Coming to you from the heart of Dinokeng Game Reserve, alongside this beautiful waterhole.
Answer the sky, basically.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Matt's Habitat. I'm Matt, your host, and today our guest is David. David, welcome to the show. Can you introduce yourself to us and maybe tell us what your job title is in the reserve and what responsibilities you have?
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, I'm David Boshoff. I'm the park manager, and I think we have a lot of responsibilities in the park. It all depends on us if the teams can do their work. As part of park management, you are there to make sure that everyone have a function and they can do their work.
Fantastic. And David, obviously, in order to run a big reserve like Dinokeng, you're going to have different departments that you would manage. What sort of departments do you have? How many people are employed by the game reserve, or the game reserve itself, the management authority?
Well, I think we all know that Dinokeng is a big 5 game reserve with 20,000 hectares, and we're close to a city. We're firstly close to Pretoria, and then we're close to a community that we call Hammanskraal. And Dinokeng is quite unique because it's quite a complex game reserve to run. We have 180 landowners that the reserve consists of, and we have a lot of roads going through the reserve. We have about 160 kilometers of a perimeter fence line that we need to manage.
Sure. And
to keep all of these teams intact and for each of them to do their work is quite extensive management. Like we said, you got a fence team that do fence patrols. You got a fence team that do fence maintenance. We have a proper anti-poaching team. We got facility manager teams, and then we got park management. And all of them need to work together. If one employee doesn't work together, then it puts a lot of pressure on the other teams. We're here to look after the animals in the park. Like we said, we're a big 5 game reserve. It's important for us to make sure that everyone in the team do his part.
For sure. You spoke a bit about the reserve and the layout of the reserve, and obviously we know Dinokeng is unique in that regard. Could you tell us a bit more about the reserve, maybe when it was established, what were the challenges in bringing in Big 5 into an area that hasn't had Big 5 for a long time, and what are the challenges that you would face with a landowner-based reserve like Dinokeng Game Reserve as park management?
Okay, so the reserve is 12 years old. It was established in September 2011, and we're quite a youngies reserve. I think we getting out of the baby shoes now. We need to start to run now, and to put all the procedures and what we have learned over the 12 years in place to make sure this is one of the best conservation projects that you get in Africa. We're quite unique in the sense that we consist of 180 landowners. Most of the properties is 21 hectares, and we have government. So government is a big shareholder in the park with the other 180 landowners, and all of them combined make then the park of 20,000 hectares.
Okay. Like we say in Dinokeng, you can buy into it. The land is owned privately. What benefits would one have buying into the game reserve?
Well, I think the uniqueness of Dinokeng is where, like you said, it's private people that can own property within a Big 5 environment, and with other key species like cheetah and spotted hyena. And with 30 kilometers or 30 minutes drive from Pretoria, you're 50 kilometers from a big international airport. So in that sense that you can own property within a Big 5 environment. So you can either have a lifestyle where you can just live here, or you can have a product. That means you can have a tourism facility or business that you can run for income. So I think the uniqueness of Dinokeng is there that any public person can stay within a Big 5 environment and then enjoy the benefits of a Big 5 reserve.
Awesome. And you touched on the fact that in a few years' time you see Dinokeng becoming this kind of big conservation project or successful conservation project, what kind of conservation projects are going on in Dinokeng? Do you have any special projects in terms of specific animals and conservation of specific animals?
Yeah, we have a few. I think Dinokeng is maybe one of the few game reserve where we said you have 180 landowners, but they combine the land to form the big landscape of 20,000 hectares. I think it's also a unique conservation model where private people with government contribute to have a conservation area of 20,000 hectares. And then we have a few projects. The one is the Black Rhino project, the BREP, called BREP, the Black Rhino Range Expansion Project, where we relocated 14 black rhinos from KZN Wildlife into the reserve that are doing exceptionally well. And also we're the only game reserve in Gauteng with black rhino. Also, it costs you a lot of money to look after them. Okay, then we have another project, the cheetah metapopulation project, what is quite successful. I think Dinokeng is one of the most successful reserves to contribute to cheetah conservation in South Africa. Currently we have 21 cheetahs on the game reserve, and all of them is going into the metapopulation all over Africa.
Obviously you said that Dinokeng is kind of coming out of its baby shoes and wanting to kind of grow as a game reserve. Is there room for expansion? And if so, what are the potential options for expansion? Is there room to expand to make the game reserve bigger?
Yeah, I think one of our crew objectives of the reserve is to expand the game reserve. Our earmark is to grow up to 42,000 hectares. And around the reserve there is potential of areas to expand to. We got military property and we got private property, and but it all costs money. If you look at moving fences, you talk about 500 rand plus meter just to move your or to erect new fences or to move your current fences. And without that funding, it's not possible to expand. So firstly, we have the land where we can expand, but to pay for that is crucial for us.
I'm sure. David, obviously we've spoken a lot on the fact that Dinokeng is a very unique reserve in terms of it being owned by private landowners and landowners incorporating their land into the greater reserve. What challenges did the reserve face when it started in terms of restoring the land to be able to have Big Five in it?
So the challenge was how to get all these land parcels inside the reserve. So they started with the Blue IQ property. That was actually from part of the area where these bigger game reserve were consist of. And then there was the 180 landowners with the smaller 21 hectares. And the challenge was, how do you get then those 21 hectares to form part of the bigger game reserve? So the first thing was to go and talk to them. Do you want to take your land and put it within the Big Five game reserve, and there's certain benefits that you will have? But yes, the challenge was then to get those 21 hectares part of the reserve.
To persuade them to.
Yes, to persuade them, yeah. And the other challenge was then to drop all of the inside fences, because we said it was 21 hectares that consist of a lot of old farmlands. And how do you then rehabilitate those farmlands to then form part of the bigger Dinokeng reserve? Also, some of those areas had existing game, so government went and they purchased those game, pay out the landowners for their game, and leave those animals within the reserve. And on a continuous way, there was negotiations to make sure that they can find a big enough area where you can introduce Big Five. So rhinos were here already in the area, like on the Mongena and the Kualata, those areas. But stuff like elephants, lions, and buffalo, those were the animals that was reintroduced into the area to form part of this unique Dinokeng Big Five reserve. The other challenge was there was a community on the outskirts of this area, and how do you then convince a community to form part of this reserve, or to give their blessing to have a Big Five reserve on their doorstep, because it was all new to these people. Lions, elephants haven't roamed in this area for many years, And when the game reserve was established, to introduce that big farm was a new thing for the current landowners, also for the community that was on the outskirts of this unique reserve.
And of those 180 landowners, there must have been maybe a few people that didn't buy into the concept. I mean, obviously you couldn't force people to include their land in. What happened to those properties where people perhaps had their established businesses and didn't want to be part of the game reserve?
Yeah, I think that will always remain a challenge for us. So we call them island properties. So that means when they were negotiating with these landowners of the 21 hectares, some of those landowners that you said did not want to form part of the Big Five landscape, and they were actually fenced out. So on their perimeter fence of the 21 hectares, we erect a Big Five game fence, and they then do not form part of the Big Five area, but they still live inside the perimeter fence of the game reserve.
All right. Just a few more questions to finish off. What's one thing you would like people to know about Dinokeng Game Reserve?
I think the one thing I would like as a conservation officer is the uniqueness that you have in this park on a big city doorstep, that we can contribute to the platform in conservation. We discussed the different projects that we have and the uniqueness of Dinokeng to contribute to conservation. For a big city next to Pretoria, we fall within the city of Tshwane boundaries, and we're 30 minutes drive from a big city where everyone can come and visit Big Five on their doorstep.
Fantastic. And last one, what's your favorite animal and why?
Sure. My favorite animal I will say is buffalo. I think they call them silent killers. But yeah, I just think it's for the uniqueness and the aggression that they don't always show, but suddenly it can turn around a buffalo. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, David. Thanks for your input and joining us. Really appreciate it. And until next time.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.